do with the Rwanda plan. Obviously, the ECHR had an issue with our intentions to do that. And now the European Union may be doing the same thing. So, again, following the comments by Ireland over, which obviously shows actually that the Rwanda plan is working as a deterrent, remarkably, because people are fleeing from Northern Ireland to the Republic of Ireland in order to escape being sent potentially to Rwanda. So the fact that they now are talking about wanting to send migrants back to to the United Kingdom, but if they were to do that, then they would face exactly the same problems as we face, sending them back to France. And so we can then say to Ireland, well, OK, if the European Union wants to send migrants back to the United Kingdom, then the European Union needs to let us send those migrants back to France. So all around, this is a real checkmate for Rishi Sunak, and actually it's quite good news ahead of the local elections. Great stuff.
And also, is this a good thing or a cynical thing for von der Leyen to have done? Because there's a massive backlash across the 27 member states. There are elections coming up, and open borders is proving to be electorally suicidal. Is that why she's doing it?
Yes, again, it's preservation of power, and also it's like a survival technique, but also I think it inadvertently provides commentary on Brexit, because what you have is the entire European bank suffering the same problem and reaching a point where they know a solution is needed. But like they say, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. You're all facing the same problem, and unified, you could find a collective solution. But the UK is on the outside. So that's how they can afford to be flagrant about a hypocritical move, but letting the UK know, because you no longer enjoy the privilege of those relationships, we can make a move that flies in the face of what you're doing and not face the same consequence.
And very quickly, if we could, Emma, do you think this is just total hypocrisy from von der Leyen?
Yes.
There we go. That was very quick. I did say very quick. That certainly was. Thank you very much, Judita. And Emma, see you again in the next hour. Great. I love having a panel. I may have said that before. Now, coming up next, what will Humza Yousaf's resignation mean for our Prime Minister as Tory rebels plot a 100-day blitz to topple Rishi Sunak? Plus, there's a big debate in the Commons in the next half an hour on assisted dying after Dame Enter Ranson's campaign gained more than 200,000 signatures. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel. But first, it's your weather.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Afternoon, welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. An east-west split with the weather again tomorrow. It'll feel a bit warmer in many eastern areas, but again, further west, just like today, low pressure will dominate and there will be further outbreaks of rain. This weather front has made for quite a damp day over parts of Wales. That rain now extending up across northern Scotland. Some heavy showers for Northern Ireland for a while. Should turn dry here through this evening, drying up in southern Scotland, staying dry across East Anglia and the southeast, but further rain at times over the Midlands, parts of Wales and the southwest of England too, where it stays cloudy. Temperatures likely to stay up 8, 9, maybe 10 degrees Celsius, even with some clearer spells. Not particularly chilly, certainly a much milder night than recently across Scotland. Maybe 5 or 6 through some sheltered glens. Generally, though, a lot of cloud around on Tuesday morning. Some heavier rain again for Northern Ireland and parts of Wales, particularly Pembrokeshire early on, and then Devon and Cornwall too. But a much brighter day for northwest England. Plenty of sunshine right across northern England, the Midlands, East Anglia and the southeast. And here really will feel quite a bit warmer than it has done for most of April. 16, 17, 18 degrees easily. It will be cooler where we've got the cloud and the outbreaks of rain further west. Quite blustery here too, particularly in the morning, thanks to this area of low pressure. Now that does peel away, allowing warmer air to move in through the rest of this week, but there will still be some rain around as well.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm John Vincent. In North Lanarkshire, the slip road on the M74 northbound is partially blocked, causing queues. It's as a result of 2 broken down vehicles, and it's at junction 5, the Wraith interchange. Traffic still struggling in Northumberland on the A1 in Berwick. That's all due to temporary traffic lights and roadworks at the intersection with Magdalen Road. Queues on the M1 northbound in Bedfordshire due to an earlier broken down vehicle just after junction 10, the Luton Airport Spur Road. Road. Queues going back towards junction 9 for Redburn. Queuing traffic in Cornwall for the A3074 in Leland. That's due to roadworks near the train station turn-off. We're seeing queues in both directions, although the congestion is worse if you're heading southbound. And that's the latest travel news.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
You really could be our next big winner with an incredible £20,000 in tax-free cash to play with this summer. What would you spend that on? Well, whilst you're thinking about it, listen to some of our previous winners getting that winning phone call from us.
You're the winner of the Great British Giveaway.
I'm slipping neck. Oh dear.
Oh my God, are you joking?
You're joking. Really? Seriously, it's not a wine. What is it?
Oh my God, this is amazing. Thank you.
The next winning call could be answered by you. For a chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQs live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQs live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
A very good afternoon to you, and I hope you're having a very happy Monday. It's 4 p.m. Welcome to the Martin Daubney Show on GB News, and we're broadcasting live from the heart of Westminster all across the UK. On today's show, what now for Scotland after the resignation of Humza Yousaf as First Minister? Was he broke before going woke? Who will be the next leader? We'll get reaction and analysis throughout the remainder of the show. And the growing dispute over who should look after the increasing numbers of asylum seekers in Ireland. Well, the UK says it won't accept any returns of those who've travelled there until EU law is changed so we can send ours back to France. We've got a borderline face-off. Next up, the debate over a sister dying is in the Commons today after a campaign by Dame Esther Ranson. We'll be speaking to someone shortly who has sat on both sides of this fence. An astonishing story. You'll not want to miss it. And we have this, the incredible footage showing how a machete-wielding thug is locked inside a shop by its owner during an attempted armed robbery. Very, very quick thinking by the shop owner. We'll have a full inside story on that coming up in your next hour. Welcome to the show. Always an absolute delight to have your company. So that footage there of that armed thug with a machete in broad daylight inside a shop, brazenly robbing the shop owner, who just quick thought and look, goes outside, shuts the door, locks him inside so he can't get out, not only for his own safety, but probably hoping the police might come while he's still in there. Look, he's pulling the door open, trying to chop the shopkeeper's arm off. Absolute disgrace. The state of this country, these thugs going around with machetes in broad daylight. What can we do to stop the bedlam on our streets? We'll have a full discussion on that. Get in touch. And there's a new way of doing so. Go to gbnews.com/your say. You'll see my face. Drop a comment and I'll reply before the end of the show. But first, it's time for your latest news headlines with Ray Addison.
Thanks, Martin. Good afternoon. 2 minutes past 4, our top stories this hour. The SNP will hold a leadership contest after the Scottish First Minister announced his resignation earlier. Humza Yousaf's admitted that he underestimated the level of upset he would cause by cutting political ties with the Greens. He'll now continue in his post until a replacement is found. Mr Yousaf says he's quitting to help repair relationships across the political divide.
I bear no ill will and certainly bear no grudge against anyone. Politics can be a brutal business. It takes its toll on your physical and mental health. Your family suffer alongside you. I am in absolute debt to my wonderful wife, my beautiful children, and my wider family for putting up with me over the years. I'm afraid you'll be seeing a lot more of me from now.
Well, the race to replace Humza Yousaf starts now. Former Deputy First Minister John Swinney says he's considering it carefully.
I've got lots of things to think about. There's the whole question of my family, and I have to make sure that I do the right thing by my family. They're precious to me. I have to do the right thing by my party and by my country. So there's lots to be thought about, and I'll give all of that consideration in the days to come.
2 men are due to appear in court charged with murder after a torso was found at a nature reserve in Salford. Greater Manchester Police believes human remains at 3 other locations belong to the same victim, thought to be a man in his 60s. The initial discovery was made by a member of the public at Curzledale Wetlands 3.5 weeks ago. A man has admitted killing a pensioner who was on a mobility scooter in West London. 87-year-old Thomas O'Halloran was stabbed in the neck and chest in August 2022. Lee Byer committed what was described as a motiveless attack 5 days after being released from prison. He denied murder but pleaded guilty to manslaughter by diminished responsibility. Dozens of migrants have been rescued from the Channel after their small boat got into difficulties off the French coast. It's understood a number of people were pulled from the water and taken to the port at Calais. The latest rescue operation comes after senior Border Force officials raised concerns that people in small boats are using children as human shields to evade police. Last week, over 900 migrants crossed to the UK. A debate on whether assisted dying should be legalised for terminally ill people is being held this afternoon. Now, earlier on, campaigners gathered outside of Parliament calling for change. Assisted suicide is currently banned in England, Wales and Northern Ireland. In Scotland, it's not a specific criminal offence, but those who help others to end their own lives risk being charged with murder. Opponents say vulnerable people could be pressured into taking their own lives. New laws protecting consumers from hacking and cyber attacks are now in force, with all smart devices required to meet minimum security standards. Manufacturers of products like phones, TVs and smart doorbells are now legally required to protect internet-connected devices against criminal access. Common passwords like 12345 are being banned in the UK as part of world-first legislation, and users will be prompted to change them. And we're being warned to brace ourselves for even more food price rises, with beer, biscuits and bread among items expected to jump. The wet weather means that harvests of barley and wheat could be down by as much as a fifth. Storms and flooding throughout the last few months have forced British farmers to constantly delay sowing crops. The warning comes just as food prices are beginning to fall, following soaring inflation sparked by the global gas price crisis. For the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Back now to Martin.
Thank you, Ray. Well, we kick off this hour, of course, with the massive news this Monday afternoon. The Scottish National Party leader, Humza Yousaf, has sensationally quit, triggering a search for his successor and new First Minister. And the First Minister made a statement at Bute House earlier on at midday, and let's take a little listen.
I've concluded that repairing our relationship across the political divide can only be done with someone else at the helm.
Well, members of the Scottish Parliament now have to back a replacement in that post within 28 days. And we'll go live to Edinburgh with our Scotland reporter, Tony Maguire. Tony, welcome to the show. So on Friday, when we spoke, Humza Yousaf vowed to fight on. Today, the fight dwindled. He stepped down. The big question is, what's next for Scotland? Who's next as the First Minister, do we think?
It's always funny how in situations like this, you know, well, a lot of people obviously are sad to see Humza Yousaf go. The conversation almost immediately turns on to runners and riders. Who will be next to replace him? And sure enough, we heard from Nicola Sturgeon's Deputy First Minister, John Swinney, earlier. He wouldn't commit, but he did say he was going to give the role consideration. We've also seen quite an active X account from Kate Forbes today, and there are other names in contention, including Neil Gray. And of course, I think a lot of people would like to see Angus Robertson throw his name in the ring, but of course he wasn't in the mood the last time. Quite a lot of reaction as well so far in the last couple of hours. Anas Sarwar, he's been speaking to reporters in Glasgow, and you know, he is dead set on wanting this Scottish election. In fact, he put out a press release over a year ago now to say that Scottish Labour was election ready. Douglas Ross, in the meantime, he says that Scottish Conservatives, well, they've done their job in providing a solid opposition for the Scottish Nationalists, and indeed he is determined to continue playing that role. We've also heard from Nicola Sturgeon, who said that Humza conducted himself with grace, dignity and integrity, and of course Shona Robison, Humza Yousaf's Deputy First Minister, well, she said that Humza Yousaf has been a pioneer. But if I may, enough of the political elites. I've also been speaking to people here in Edinburgh, in fact people who bothered enough about this to turn up either at Bute House or here at Holyrood. Let's listen to what they had to say. Well, how do you take the news this morning?
Oh, it's brilliant news. Aye. Maybe get our country back and stop with these speech laws. Hate speech.
I really feel that he's been manoeuvred into a situation which doesn't account for the good, humane man that he is.
Bad situation for Humza, and it's bad for Scotland.
I think it's a very good thing. Scotland needs a firm minister to take the country forward.
Certainly the SNP have been leading down a raggedy road for the last 7-8 years.
I would say the Greens betrayed us because when they had their challenge, we supported them.
The Parliament, the Tories and the Labour, all they can think of is grievance.
Well, there we go, a raggedy road. I mean, what better describes Humza Yousaf's 13 months as First Minister here? He was the continuity candidate of Nicola Sturgeon. Is John Swinney going to be the continuity candidate for Humza Yousaf? And is that really the best way for the Scottish National Party to stick their oar in for the next 2 years and to stay, even as a minority government, as Scotland's leading party? It's too early to say, but this today definitely starts this next SNP leadership race. It's almost becoming an annual event at this point, Martin.
Tony Maguire, there didn't seem to be much love lost there for Humza Yousaf on the streets of Edinburgh earlier on. Thanks for joining us, as ever, live from Edinburgh. Now we can speak to the former Member of Scottish Parliament and Member of the European Parliament, Brian Monteith. Brian, welcome to the show. Always a delight to have you on. No doubt you'll be doing the Highland Fling this morning. You wrote an excellent column in The Scotsman, predicting the demise of Humza Yousaf. Has it come even sooner than you thought it would happen, though, Brian?
Well, it probably has, and not quite maybe in the way I would have expected. I thought he would be able to try and hang on to at least go down fighting, but it's quite clear that the men in grey kilts behind the scenes have made it plain that he couldn't win the vote. And therefore he should do the honourable thing and resign. But of course he hasn't resigned. He's intimated he will resign. And that actually creates a problem in as much as it delays any possible general election in Scotland for Holyrood if they can't find a replacement. That has to be agreed within 28 days from resignation. But he hasn't technically, as far as I can see, handed the notice in yet.
Brian, what you were saying in your Scotsman column was that the bigger threat in many ways was a vote of no confidence in the entire SNP administration, forcing a general election, which no doubt the Conservatives, the Labour Party and the Greens would be able to make hay at. Do you think that may in part explain why Humza Yousaf has fallen so quickly on his sword to try and save the party from election?
Well, I think facing the electorate is really what this is about, both for the opposition parties who, for different reasons amongst them, would like to have a Holyrood election, and the SNP who would like to avoid one. And so their trick is to say, we'll find a replacement for Mr. Yousaf, but he'll still be there while we do that. Well, it's not really for them, I believe, to set the process. He's announced he will resign. Well, he should resign immediately with immediate effect, and the clock should start ticking so that if they cannot get agreement, there will be an election within 28 days from that point.
Superb stuff. Always a delight to talk to you. Brian Monteith, former MSP and MEP and superb columnist in The Scotsman. Thanks for joining us on the show. And I'm joined now in our studio by our political editor, Chris Hope. Chris, you've come in rather breathless. Thank you for dashing in to get into the show. Always a delight to have you. Talk about a fast pace on Friday. Humza Yousaf saying, I will fight on. Now the fight's gone. He's fallen on his sword. A week is a long time in politics. A weekend was too much for Yousaf.
It seems that way. I mean, and right now it's what's the future for this administration? John Swinney, the grand old man of the party, Deputy First Minister from 2014-2023 under Nicola Sturgeon, of course, leader in opposition 2000-2004. He did think, he had said so, my time at the top of this of Scottish politics has gone away, and yet suddenly a crisis presents an opportunity. He said this afternoon that he is thinking he'll have more to say in coming weeks. I'm giving the issue very active consideration, he says. It's likely I'll have more to say about that in coming days, whether he'd replace Humza Yousaf. But I think there'll be books written about how on earth to squander power. And he forced out the Greens from this coalition and had no idea they were going to side with the opposing parties and force him out. And he's left going cap in hand to Alex Salmond, the person who just couldn't bear Nicola Sturgeon in the Alba party. So extraordinary.
Astonishing stuff. What was really interesting there, Tony Maguire spoke to a bunch of people on the streets, the voters, the public, the people who matter. We're the People's Channel. And what I was struck by was a total dissatisfaction with the entire political agenda. One of them even almost sounded like Lee Anderson. He said, brilliant, we'll get our country back. Another said, we've become a country obsessed with grievance. Do you think, or do you hope, Chris Hope, that Humza Yousaf going might spell an end to this obsession with identity politics, with what people may call woke politics? Get back to what people care about: crime, the NHS, schools, real politics.
And that's what Rishi Sunak, the Prime Minister, has been saying should happen now. The SNP should go back to what matters, the bread and butter issues, the issues which are just devolved to their administration: crime, health, education. And the schools system is failing children up in Scotland compared to England, where it's advanced. It was the other way around 20 years ago or so. I think there's a feeling that the Cass report that came out showed up this issue of trans children and the way they're treated by the NHS for what it was. And I think that many felt the Greens had pulled the SNP into this place where they're battling on these culture wars issues, which many people just don't really care about in the same way as health, the bread and butter politics that you describe. I think that's where it might go under John Swinney.
Well, let's hope we're going to have a return to common sense. Chris Hope, always a delight to see you, especially on a Monday. Now, let's quickly move on. We'll have lots more on that story, of course, at 5 o'clock, and there's plenty of coverage on our website, GBNews.com, and you've helped to make it the fastest-growing national news website in the country, so thank you very much. Now, summer is just around the corner, or so they keep promising us, and we want to make it sizzle for you with an incredible £20,000 in cash up for grabs in the latest Great British Giveaway. It's our biggest cash prize to date, and it could be all of yours. And here's how you could be our winner.
We've blown the budget by giving you the chance to win a totally terrific £20,000 in tax-free cash to make your summer spectacular. You could use that cash to splash out on a holiday, make the garden glam, buy a new car, or just save it for a rainy day. Whatever you'd spend £20,000 on, make sure you don't miss the chance to make it yours. For a chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Coming up, we have a GB News exclusive from Mark White that reveals how some Channel migrants are using their children as human shields. Despicable. That's next. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Squatters in London have taken over a pub which is leased by Gordon Ramsay, no less. The pub is currently up for sale with a guide price of £30 million. It is understood that Kitchen Nightmares host Ramsay called the police on Wednesday but wasn't able to have the squatters removed. The Metropolitan Police said in a statement they were made aware of squatters at a disused property but added, this is a civil matter and so police did not attend the property. Let's see what my panel make of this. Well, why can't we just boot squatters out? If we own a property or lease a property, why don't we just boot them out?
I know that's tempting, but the fact is, long-term empty properties have increased by 24% in the last 6 years. There's 1.2 million people on the social housing lists. People don't have a place to live.
What it does highlight is the enormous disparity in fairness in property laws in this country. I mean, it's just not fair that if you've worked all your life and invested some money in property because, you know, interest rates at zero and there's nowhere else to invest your money, and then suddenly somebody who's got no claim to that property and doesn't seem to have earned very much in life takes over your property. It's an outrage.
People shouldn't be squatting in other people's homes or commercial properties. But the fact is, until we sort the housing problem in this country, none of this is going to go away. The fact is, people my age won't be able to buy a home unless they've got a bung from their parents.
Yeah, but what's the practicality of this demonstration?
It's not a demonstration.
It's not going to free up more housing for people who are on the streets.
No, of course not.
Is it?
It's people looking to find a place to live. I don't think it's a demonstration at all.
It's an anti-wealth, anti-property-owning demonstration by people who've got nothing better to do in life than break into other people's property.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 4:21. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News. Now, Border Force officials have told GB News of concerns Channel migrants are using children as human shields to stop police puncturing their small boats. It's an astonishing package, and here it is now from our Home Security editor, Mark White.
This is a rare look inside the small boat's operational command at Dover Harbour. As we filmed, the Border Force vessel Defender was alongside, offloading another 66 Channel migrants, the latest of more than 7,000 who've arrived here so far this year. And this, their mode of transport, large but extremely flimsy inflatable rafts, made for the criminal gangs in backstreet factories.
I mean, these aren't seaworthy for
anything because they are just not made to any standard.
Trevor Taylor has seen increasing numbers packed into these vessels. 70 or 80 migrants on each boat is now common.
It's just not safe. The way it's constructed, I mean, this is typical where if there was a cut or a puncture in one part of this boat, the whole thing would go down.
Makeshift puncture repair kits and cheap pumps are often all the migrants have as they battle to stay afloat. And there are very few, if any, effective life jackets.
Just show you an example of that. Yeah, and that's probably not just for a child. They'll probably give that to an adult as well, saying that's going to save you. Another example, just back here, is an inner tube. We quite often see them, or they're handed out in a packet. So basically, if you panic, inflate one of those yourself.
And the engines too are completely unsuitable for the English Channel, lacking power and prone to breaking down.
You look at the engine, you might think, yeah, that's a proper engine, something you might expect. However, the organised crime groups, they put stickers like this on there, so 30, trying to trick you into thinking, 30 horsepower. In reality, it's somewhere between 10 and 15, so really not suitable to go on the boat itself, especially at sea.
The surge in violence along the French coast is of huge concern to authorities on both sides of the channel. Staff in Dover have seen increasing numbers of migrants arriving with injuries, including stab wounds.
The violence that is now shown to our French colleagues trying to prevent the launches, trying to save these people from putting their lives at risk is huge. We've seen them attacked with sticks, metal bars, machetes, using women and children that are there to cross, using them as human shields to prevent law enforcement taking action. And it's growing, it's getting worse.
This quayside here at Dover Harbour is where the Channel migrants first set foot on British soil. Of course, if Rishi Sunak's Rwanda plan comes to full fruition, then they won't be here for long. Many of them will be on a flight to East Africa. But those flights are likely still months away, and as weather conditions improve in the weeks ahead, many more of these flimsy migrant boats will arrive in UK waters, unseaworthy and dangerously overloaded. Mark White, GB News, at the Small Boats Operational Command in Dover.
Well, a fantastic package there. And I'm now joined by Mark White, who did that report. Mark, welcome to the show. Fantastic exclusive. When you get that close and that you see the detail, the motors that are woefully underpowered, the children's inflatables you wouldn't even trust in a swimming pool, Mark. And yet 6 days ago, of course, we saw a 7-year-old girl trampled to death on a boat off the coast of France. And your report now showing this, Mark, is becoming increasingly common, the use of children as human shields.
Well, indeed, and in terms of just how unsafe these boats are, once again today, another rescue operation, this time off the coast at Calais. Migrants in the water, they were picked up by rescue services from France and have been returned to Calais. We understand there are no casualties related to this particular event, but an indication of just how dangerous it is out there. These boats, in even the calmest of conditions, are liable to be inundated and flipped over because of the way in which they're just overloaded. And you're right, this boat last Tuesday had 112 people crowded on board there because a large group of African migrants had stormed the boat, forced their way on, and just added to just how unsafe that vessel was. And I think it's indicative of the growing levels of violence that the authorities in France are facing. You heard there in that report about migrants using weapons, including machetes, but also that worrying development of holding their children up and putting women in front of the police to try to stop the police getting to their boats to puncture them.
Yeah, astonishing stuff. I mean, ask the question, who would take their child on a dinghy like that? But even more so, who'd use them as a human shield? Mark White, a fantastic exclusive. Thank you for sharing it with us on the show. Now, meanwhile, EU Chief Ursula von der Leyen's party has proposed asylum deals with third countries. Does that sound familiar? Well, Rishi Sunak points out they're following our lead when it comes to the Rwanda plan. It comes, of course, after the Rwanda bill cleared Parliament finally and was granted royal assent last week. Well, joining me now to discuss this is human rights lawyer and friend of the show, David Hay. David, welcome to the show and always a delight. I want to talk to you about the fact that the EU has always maintained that immigration enriches the continent. It can only be a good thing, and yet now, suddenly, they seem to be in favour of the kind of policy that Nigel Farage would like. My question to you is it legal for them to do this?
Good afternoon, Martin. I think there's an lot of hypocrisy and absurdity that we've seen coming now, as you well know, coming from Ursula von der Leyen. I mean, in terms of, is it legal for them to do that? If they change the laws, I think technically yes, but you've still got this problem of the European Court, which also applies there. So we're going to end up in, as I always say, more and more legal battles if that's something they intend to do. And again, I think as you're seeing with Ursula von der Leyen, it's about politics. It's about her party winning votes as opposed to whether or not this will actually happen, much like you're seeing here with Rwanda.
Oh, it's exactly right, David. There are a set of EU elections coming up in June. The populist parties, those on the right, set to make huge gains. And so we're seeing, basically, those from the centre ground, the Liberals, adopting the policies to try and hold them off. David, if this goes ahead, could we see the astonishing situation where the ECHR is challenging Ursula von der Leyen over her migration plan?
Absolutely. I think that could be a real prospect if she moved ahead with those plans. We're already seeing what's happening in Ireland. We're seeing because of the borders that were there and not in place, so that people going across now, people coming into England, getting into actual Ireland from Northern Ireland easily, asylum seekers. Ireland saying they're going to send them back. We're saying, no, you can't. And again, we're seeing the spectre of all these cross-border battles now, which it's getting more and more absurd. The chaos, as you saw in your earlier report, and the desperation of the people is increasing. And as you saw from the Deputy Director of Small Boats Command, she said that it's only getting worse. So I think that's what you're going to see.
And David, quickly, if you could, how can it be legally possible that the Republic of Ireland can say, right, we're sending back these people to the United Kingdom because we don't want them, and yet we can't say, right, we're sending these people back to France because we don't want them? What's the difference?
Well, absolutely. At the moment, they've already said they have to change their law to enable them to do that. But they are saying that they intend to do that. We're saying that you're not going to. And it's this battle of laws that you often see in human rights, and you will see in borders, and the situation we have at the moment with Northern Ireland and Ireland, and obviously England coming out of the EU. It's a very, very complex situation that's made even more complex by the increasing desperation of the people, for whatever reasons, trying to come across the channel.
OK, David Hay, human rights lawyer, thank you for joining us. Thank you for making some sense of that. Always a delight to have you on the show. You take care. Now, there's lots more still to come between now and 5 o'clock, including the debate of assisted dying. And we'll be speaking to someone shortly who has sat on both sides of the fence. An incredible story. You will not want to miss it. But first, it's time for your headlines, and it's Ray Addison.
Thanks, Martin. 31 minutes past 4, our top stories. A leadership contest will be launched in Scotland now after the First Minister announced his resignation. Humza Yousaf's admitted he underestimated the level of upset that he would cause by cutting political ties with the Greens. He's also stepping down as SNP leader, but will continue in that post until a replacement is found. An emotional Mr Yousaf said he's quitting to help repair relationships across the political divide.
I bear no ill will and certainly bear no grudge against anyone. Politics can be a brutal business. It takes its toll on your physical and mental health. Your family suffer alongside you. I am in absolute debt to my wonderful wife, my beautiful children, and my wider family for putting up with me over the years. I'm afraid you will be seeing a lot more of me from now.
2 men have appeared in court charged with murder after a torso was found in a nature reserve in Salford. The 68 and 42-year-olds spoke only to confirm their names and dates of birth with the help of Polish translators. Greater Manchester Police believes human remains at 3 other locations belong to the same victim, a man in his 60s. A man has admitted killing a pensioner on a mobility scooter in West London just 5 days after being released from prison. 45-year-old Lee Byer stabbed 87-year-old Thomas O'Halloran in the neck and chest in what was described as a motiveless attack back in August 2022. Byer denied murder but pleaded guilty to manslaughter by diminished responsibility. Campaigners have been rallying outside Parliament, where MPs are debating whether assisted dying should be legalised for the terminally ill. It's after more than 200,000 people signed a petition backed by Dame Esther Ransom, who has stage 4 lung cancer. Those who oppose a change in the law fear vulnerable people could be pressured into ending their lives. For the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Ray. Now, in a few minutes, should assisted dying become law in this country? I've got an astonishing interviewee coming in who first believed it was a good idea, and then when he saw the inner workings, he changed his mind. It's an astonishing story. You won't want to miss it. But first, there's a new way to get in touch with us here at GB News, and here's Bev Turner with all of the details.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family. Simply go to gbnews.com/yoursay.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm John Vincent. Traffic struggling in Northumberland on the A1 at Berwick. It's all due to roadworks at Magdalen Road. Queuing traffic for the M8 in Glasgow in both directions. That's between junction 15 Townhead and 21 for the M74. That's all down to roadworks. We're seeing slow traffic on the M60 anti-clockwise in Manchester between junction 6 Sale and 5 the Princess Parkway. Traffic still struggling on the M1 northbound in Bedfordshire due to an earlier broken down vehicle. That's just after junction 10, the Luton Airport Spur Road. We've got the usual stop-start traffic on the M25 into the roadworks in Surrey, up towards junction 10, the Wisley interchange, where it's also slow for the A3. And traffic still struggling in Cornwall on the A3074 in Lelland. That's all due to roadworks near the train station turn-off.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
It's the first time we've had an admission from someone who, at least used to be very senior in the party, saying that this election is not about winning, really, for the Conservatives now. It's about mitigating the losses.
There is broad recognition that this election has already been lost and that it's about damage limitation. And it is really important because it's the difference between whether, if Labour win a slim majority, then the fight is on for the next election. I know it seems silly to look 5 years ahead, but it does make a difference, versus basically accepting that we have 10 years of Labour government ahead.
Having an acknowledgement that the Tories are going to lose and lose badly, disastrously maybe, having that acknowledgement coming from somebody so senior is very demoralising for everybody else in the party, but also doesn't it make it then look rather immoral for them to just drag on right through to maybe November?
Personally, I think Rishi Sunak should name the date now. I think he should name it for October or November.
In terms of reform, if they're only 4 points behind the Conservatives in the latest poll, do we need to stop the narrative, which we have been using legitimately, saying, well, they're doing all right in the polls, but they won't win any seats? Do we need to change that perspective now?
I think it's really difficult to say. It depends on Reform's electoral strategy. There's a lot of evidence that in certain parts of the country with certain demographics, they do have a really good chance. So I think if they target seats in the red wall and other places where there's big disillusionment with the Conservatives and what they'd promised. I can't imagine that Reform are at the stage where they could take masses of seats. It's more about that portion of the vote that they'll be taking away that I think is going to result in that massive Labour landslide.
Welcome back. Your time is 4:37. I'm Martin Daubney and this is GB News. Now, campaigners have been outside Parliament this afternoon today as MPs debate whether assisted dying should be legalised for terminally ill people in the UK. Pardon me. It's after more than 200,000 signatures were added to a petition backed by Dame Esther Ranson, who has stage 4 lung cancer. And those who oppose a change in the law say vulnerable people could be pressured into ending their lives. Well, I'm delighted to say that I'm joined in the studio now by someone who has sat on both sides of the fence on this debate, author and campaigner against assisted dying, Paul Carroll. Paul, welcome to the show. Fascinating story. So tell me why initially you were in favour of assisted dying, and then why did you change your mind?
I can take this back about 6 or 7 years. I'm 68 now, so I was 62. My partner's actually 16 years younger than me. And being practical people, we were planning wills, we were getting our affairs in order. And we said, what about if I ever became ill? With the age gap, that was the inspiration. And I said, imagine I'm 80 and you're in your mid-60s, and say I had a chronic illness or had Alzheimer's and wasn't able to recognise you. Yeah. Would that be fair on me to expect you to care for me? Mm-hmm. And because we were in good health, it was a sort of like, yeah, I'd like, well, look at Dignitas. And actually joining Dignitas is so simple. You could join your local library as easily. It's just one form and one payment.
And then what led you to your awakening where you thought, no, this isn't the right thing for me or indeed anybody who I love?
Well, so it was like an insurance policy, tick the box, signed up, in the drawer if ever needed. So it goes 2 or 3 years. We get to 2019. And the first thing that had happened is that my partner's mother, who was 69 at the time, was diagnosed with cancer, which was very distressing for the family. She was treated very, very well, had chemotherapy, but unfortunately it didn't work. Mm-hmm. And her decline was very rapid from diagnosis to actually passing 11 months, which was very distressing for us all. And so, in some regards, would that question of assisted death come up at that point? And the interesting thing is it never did, because we did not want her to go. And she did not want to go. Right. The life force in her was incredible. And as a family, we witnessed this, shared this, right down to nobody's pretending, assisted or unassisted or natural death is anything but traumatic for all involved. But there was there were blessings to be received from that. We were there with her on vigil. She was incredibly well looked after, palliative care. And we realised, actually, we've signed up for Dignitas. And no, we wouldn't. This has been rather traumatic, but it's been quite wonderful as well. And it helped with the grieving process thereafter.
And tell me, you started to write a book. You did a huge amount of research into Dignitas and many of those who've been through it. What was it about that started to concern you?
Yes, well, I started on a new novel, and I was looking, and maybe the story came from that. And I decided that this story was going to be about 4 individuals who had decided. In this version of the book, it's slightly in the future in the UK, and assisted dying had been legalised. So it's all made very, very easy. You go to a nice sort of clinic and have a 5-day stay before the end. So obviously, as a writer would, I started researching the ramifications. And to do that, I looked very closely at the countries where assisted dying was already legalised. And what I found rather shocked me. And concerned me.
It was actually very, very easy, or the law had changed.
So easy, and this is the parliamentary debate, which is a non-voting debate today, but I think there will be an actual vote of conscience on this in the next Parliament. The stipulation is that three things. We will have assisted dying if it's legalised, and it will be for patients facing end of life, terminal illnesses, who have made their own decision, very, very important, and who have a very short life expectancy. So they're three things, two of which can't actually be really quantified. Yes, 2 or 3 doctors might be able to reach a consensus. So that really shocked me, the ease of which the parameters widened as soon as the law came in.
OK, superb. Thank you for joining us, Paul Carroll, and sharing your story. And quickly, I believe you've got a book out.
Yes, I have. It's called Shaking Hands with Elvis. It's dark humour, which is ironic in terms of a very serious topic.
Great.
But it will help any reader to make their own mind up on this subject.
Fascinating, and that debate is going on right now in the Commons. We'll bring you news on that as it comes through. Paul Carroll, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your story.
Thank you.
Now, still to come this hour, beer, bread and biscuits. 3 of the nation's favourite staples, certainly mine, they're under fire. We'll find out why next. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Afternoon, welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. An east-west split with the weather again tomorrow. It'll feel a bit warmer in many eastern areas, but again, further west, just like today, the low pressure will dominate and there will be further outbreaks of rain. This weather front has made for quite a damp day over parts of Wales. That rain now extending up across northern Scotland. Some heavy showers for Northern Ireland for a while. Should turn drier here through this evening, drying up in southern Scotland, staying dry across East Anglia and the southeast, but further rain at times over the Midlands, parts of Wales and the southwest of England too, where it stays cloudy. Temperatures likely to stay up 8, 9, maybe 10 degrees Celsius, even with some clearer spells. Not particularly chilly, certainly a much milder night than recently across Scotland. Maybe 5 or 6 through some sheltered glens. Generally, though, a lot of cloud around on Tuesday morning. Some heavier rain again for Northern Ireland and parts of Wales, particularly Pembrokeshire early on, and then Devon and Cornwall too. But a much brighter day for northwest England. Plenty of sunshine right across northern England, the Midlands, East Anglia and the southeast. And here really will feel quite a bit warmer than it has done for most of April. 16, 17, 18 degrees easily. It will be cooler where we've got the cloud and the outbreaks of rain further west. Quite blustery here too, particularly in the morning, thanks to this area of low pressure. Now that does peel away, allowing warmer air to move in through the rest of this week, but there will still be some rain around as well.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's election channel. And from Thursday,
the people decide.
As the country heads to the polls in a rush of elections, we'll take you through the night as the first results come in.
And we'll pick up at breakfast
with the very best guests and analysis.
And on the weekend, the results won't stop, and neither will we.
We'll explore what it all means for you as we look ahead to the general election.
Continuing coverage live from Thursday at midnight on GB News.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Tom Harwood. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 4:46. I'm Martin Daubney. This is GB News. Now, there's a new way to get in touch. gbnews.com/your say. You can get in touch in your droves. Let's go through a few of them now. The Ireland border chaos has really got you hot under the collar. Mayor says this: Ireland can threaten us all they want, but if they actually do, then at least that gives us a chance to do the same to France. I'm loving that this whole fiasco has set alight under the European Union. Theresa adds this: Herman Kelly, what a guy, talking sense. Of course, Herman Kelly is the leader of the Irish Freedom Party. He's a good pal of mine. He is a good lad. Now, quickly on Humza Yousaf. Susan Harris says this: Humza useless, a bit harsh, was a tick-box leader. He should never have been First Minister. Everything he touched turned to dust. That's probably the censored version of that. David Weil says this: it's time for a Scottish election. Ian J says Nicola Sturgeon for the First Minister of Scotland. At least she was impressively entertaining. I think Ian there has been slightly cynical and sarcastic. That's what we like on this channel. Now, I'm joined once again in the studio by the political commentator Emma Webb and the broadcast journalist Judita De Silva. Welcome to you both, ladies. Now, let's start with the the footage we showed earlier on. Can we get it on our screen again now? Viewers will see footage of a young bunch of hoodlums went inside a shop. There we go. It's in Birmingham, I believe, and one of them got a massive machete trying to get out the shop. The quick-thinking shopkeeper went outside and locked him in, probably for his own safety. Secondly, maybe he was hoping the police might actually turn up to an event like this and arrest him. We understand they escaped via a back window. There's been one arrest of a 17-year-old released on bail, but nevertheless, Emma Webb, this is a hugely shocking crime. Brazen, broad daylight, machete-wielding thugs trying to rob an honest-to-goodness shopkeeper. Absolutely disgraceful scenes. What's your take on this?
Crime is completely out of control, and everybody's seeing it on social media. There are videos every day of people in the street with machetes, fighting each other with machetes. And if you're a shopkeeper in particular, I know that we've got lots of problems here in London, and I hear anecdotally lots of stories from friends and family about shoplifting. It's obviously there's a kind of entropy to this, that the crimes are not being solved by the police, therefore the crimes get worse. That's just common sense, because people are obviously feeling emboldened that they're going to get away with this kind of behaviour. And before we were on air, Martin, you said, well, why would a young man leave the house with a machete? Well, the answer is obviously because he thinks he can rob a shop and get away with it if he takes a machete and threatens the shopkeeper. So, I mean, bravo to that quick-thinking shopkeeper for thinking to lock them into the shop. But the reality is that it is completely unreasonable that shopkeepers and staff in shops should have to deal with this kind of thing. And this is something that I imagine there will be many, many people either watching today or stories from around the country that don't get covered and can't get covered by the media because it's happening every single day all across the country.
Judita De Silva, we often on this channel talk to anti-knife campaigners. We speak to youth workers who work a lot with the black community, and they say a thing that chills me to the bone, and that is it's more dangerous to not carry a knife than it is to carry a knife for people in certain areas of Britain now, in the inner cities. How did we get to that position?
I think, first of all, it's important to know that not to laser it down to the black community, because in that video, those two individuals were clearly not black. You could see their hands, you could see parts of their faces, but the people you've spoken to happen to represent that particular demographic. But I think...
and knife crime, to be fair, the numbers do back up, not to a specific incident, but the knife crime data in London in particular, and in the West Midlands and in big cities, does tend to relay the fact that it is more culturally prevalent in certain... That's my only point.
In ethnic minority communities, there is an issue, but what I would say is that we tend to be focusing on the symptoms as opposed to the root problem. What you have is kind of almost a Bermuda Triangle, a social Bermuda Triangle that's happening right now, because it's notoriety and infamy is a currency for popularity in the social media generation today. So, for instance, with this video, chances are within the community, they'll be bragging about what what they did, and that gives them clout. So you have to kind of deal with the psychology of a disaffected youth who does not have any capabilities beyond doing something that will make him infamous. How do you cure that? That's what you should be focusing on, because like you said, you'll just be chasing your tail. They'll become more emboldened. They are harder to find. The proliferation of it makes the numbers so high you don't have the capacity to remedy it. And so you have to say what motivates you to do it, and how do you redirect that effort towards these people feeling they have more of a position in society based on their merit.
Well, it's cost-benefit, isn't it? Because there isn't really a cost to them if they think that they're going to get away with it. At least there's no perceived cost. If they think the police don't bother to solve robberies or thefts or burglaries, and at the same time they do get this benefit of being able to brag, it being a kind of cultural thing in certain areas, where they can sort of, I think you said it, that they brag, they can show off, they can wield their machetes around, and it's a kind of cultural phenomenon, and obviously is going to have something to do with social media, because you get all of these people posting on things like TikTok and so on, and maybe they do it just to kind of, I'm going to sound like such a grandma here, but to get the street cred.
But they have no other outlet because they have no other capabilities or capacity. So you have to, when you think of a lot of the youth groups that happen and you talk to the people who run those youth groups, when they talk to these young men, they say they're either from problematic homes, they have nowhere to go, nothing to do, and time. Time is toxic when it comes to somebody without the motivation to channel themselves into something productive.
But things have changed. I came from a very working class background. A lot of us didn't have a lot of money. There was quite a lot of trouble, but nobody carried knives. Something has changed. Knives are now mainstream. They seem to be acceptable to the point where, as you say, there's something to brag about.
But that point you made earlier is what's fundamental. If you feel that everyone else is carrying a knife, I have nothing, I need to feel safe, so you carry one. And with that paranoia, you might be in a tepid situation, but leap to self-defense and escalate the situation, because you're dealing with people that don't have the social vernacular to deal with situations without leaping to violence, because they haven't been raised in an environment that teaches them the pragmatic ways of crisis resolution.
Is a part of that absent fathers? We talk about this all the time. Like, are these kids growing up without a fundamental, backbone of discipline?
Well, statistically, there is obviously a relationship, and I think, it is a cultural thing across the board, particularly after the pandemic, people living their lives on social media. We do have a kind of moral vacuum. It's not just about, although obviously it is a big part, that the police don't actually do their job in policing these things, because obviously that's what needs to happen in order to stop this proliferation of people needing to carry knives in order to defend themselves. But it's also that there is this ethical vacuum there. And if you are growing up in a fatherless household with no discipline, with no authority, and you're just allowed to run riot in the streets, of course you're going to end up with these sorts of social problems.
We have to leave it there, Emma Webb and Judy Da Silva. We were going to talk about beer, biscuits and bread. We'll have to do that next time. So more on the dramatic day that Scotland's had, plus no one else from the Royals plans to attend the Invictus Games. The final stub for Harry, is it? I'm Martin Daubney, but first, here's your weather.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Afternoon, welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. An east-west split with the weather again tomorrow. It'll feel a bit warmer in many eastern areas, but again, further west, just like today, the low pressure will dominate and there will be further outbreaks of rain. This weather front has made for quite a damp day over parts of Wales. That rain now extending up across northern Scotland. Some heavy showers for Northern Ireland for a while. Should turn drier here through this evening, drying up in southern Scotland, staying dry across East Anglia and the southeast, but further rain at times over the Midlands, parts of Wales and the southwest of England too, where it stays cloudy. Temperatures likely to stay up 8, 9, maybe 10 degrees Celsius, even with some clearer spells. Not particularly chilly, certainly a much milder night than recently across Scotland. Maybe 5 or 6 through some sheltered glens. Generally, though, a lot of cloud around on Tuesday morning. Some heavier rain again for Northern Ireland and parts of Wales, particularly Pembrokeshire early on, and then Devon and Cornwall too. But a much brighter day for northwest England. Plenty of sunshine right across northern England, the Midlands, East Anglia and the southeast. And here really will feel quite a bit warmer than it has done for most of April. 16, 17, 18 degrees easily. It will be cooler where we've got the cloud and the outbreaks of rain further west, quite blustery here too, particularly in the morning, thanks to this area of low pressure. Now that does peel away, allowing warmer air to move in through the rest of this week, but there will still be some rain around as well.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm John Vincent. Slow traffic in Northumberland on the A1 in Berwick. It's all due to temporary traffic lights for roadworks at Magdalene Road, particularly slow if you're heading southbound. Stop-start on the M8 in Glasgow. That's again due to roadworks between junction 15 Townhead and 21 for the M74. We're seeing slower traffic than usual on the M6 northbound in Lancashire just before junction 28 for Leyland. Queues in Bedfordshire on the A1 Great North Road northbound. There's a lane closed in the roadworks due to an overturned lorry. That's between Blenheim and the Black Cat roundabout in Roxton. And in Hampshire, there's delays on the M27 westbound. There's a lane closed for a broken down van between junction 5 Southampton Airport and junction 4 for the M3. And that's the latest traffic and travel.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
We've blown the budget by giving you the chance to win a totally terrific £20,000 in tax-free cash to make your summer spectacular. You could use that cash to splash out on a holiday, make the garden glam, buy a new car, or just save it for a rainy day. Whatever you'd spend £20,000 on, make sure you don't miss the chance to make it yours. For a chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
A very good afternoon to you. I hope you're having a wonderful, happy Monday. It's 5 p.m. and welcome to the Martin Daubney Show on GB News, and we're broadcasting live from the heart of Westminster all across the UK. On today's show, we'll have more reaction to that massive news in Scotland today after the resignation of Humza Yousaf as First Minister. Who will be the next leader of Scotland? We'll take a look at the likely runners and riders now that McWoke went McBroke. And tensions grow between the UK and Ireland as Number 10 attacks EU double standards and refuses to take back asylum seekers until France do the same. We've got a borderline insanity face-off. And there's also a huge benefits row looming after the government revealed plans to replace sickness benefit payments with vouchers. Would that be a fair scheme, or is that an attack on disabled people's rights? And the wedding snap released by William and Kate to mark their 13th anniversary as husband and wife. Absolutely wonderful picture of your favourite royals. I'll be discussing how they'll be celebrating, taking how it's been such a difficult year. And of course, the Invictus Games, Harry has been snubbed. And that's all coming up in your next hour. Thank you for joining me on the show. Always an absolute pleasure to have your company. Loads of you have been getting in touch with your GB views so far, your says in the show. The main thing that's got you going is Humza Yousaf. Doesn't seem there's a lot of love lost out there from you. And then we found the same thing on the streets of Edinburgh earlier on. People are saying, let's move on, let's get our country back, they're saying. And also this standoff between the Irish and the UK government, because they've basically said immigration is through the roof in Ireland because of the Rwanda bill. Absolute codswallop. We spoke to a political leader earlier on who said it's political ineptitude and a lack of ability to deal with the issue. That's the real problem. What's your take? Who's actually in control of our borders? Get in touch the usual ways, and also GB News /your say. But first, it's your news headlines, and it's Ray Addison.
Cheers, Martin. 2 minutes past 5, our top stories this hour. Well, the SNP will be holding a leadership contest now after the Scottish First Minister announced his resignation earlier. Humza Yousaf's admitted that he underestimated the level of upset that he would cause by cutting political ties with the Greens. He'll continue in his post until a replacement can be found. An emotional Humza Yousaf says he's quitting to help repair relationships across the political divide.
I bear no ill will and certainly bear no grudge against anyone. Politics can be a brutal business. It takes its toll on your physical and mental health. Your family suffer alongside you. I am in absolute debt to my wonderful wife, my beautiful children, and my wider family for putting up with me over the years. I'm afraid you'll be seeing a lot more of me from now.
Well, the race to replace Humza Yousaf starts now. Former Deputy First Minister John Swinney says he's considering it carefully.
I've got lots of things to think about. There's the whole question of my family, and I have to make sure that I do the right thing by my family. They're precious to me. I have to do the right thing by my party and by my country. So there's lots to be thought about, and I'll give all of that consideration in the days to come.
2 men have appeared in court charged with murder after a torso was found in a nature reserve in Salford. These 68 and 42-year-olds spoke only to confirm their names and dates of birth with the help of Polish translators. Greater Manchester Police believes human remains at 3 other locations belong to the same victim, a man in his 60s. The initial discovery was made by a member of the public at Kersaldale Wetlands more than 3 weeks ago. A man has admitted killing a pensioner who was on a mobility scooter in West London. 87-year-old Thomas O'Halloran was stabbed in the neck and chest in August of 2022. Lee Byer committed what was described as a motiveless attack 5 days after being released from prison. He denied murder but pleaded guilty to manslaughter by diminished responsibility. Dozens of migrants have been rescued from the Channel after their small boat got into difficulties off the French coast. It's understood a number of people were pulled from the water and taken to the port at Calais. The latest rescue operation comes after senior Border Force officials raised concerns that people in small boats are using children as human shields to evade police. Last week, over 900 migrants crossed to the United Kingdom. A debate on whether assisted dying should be legalised for terminally ill people is underway in Westminster. Earlier, campaigners gathered outside of Parliament calling for change. Assisted suicide is currently banned in England, Wales and Northern Ireland. In Scotland, it's not a specific criminal offence, but those who help others to end their own lives risk being charged with murder. Opponents say vulnerable people could be pressured into ending their lives. New laws protecting consumers from hacking and cyber attacks are now in force, with all smart devices required to meet minimum security standards. Manufacturers of products like phones, TVs and smart doorbells are now legally required to protect internet-connected devices against criminal access. Common passwords, such as 12345, are being banned here in the UK as part of world-first legislation, and users will be prompted to change them. Well, we're being warned to brace ourselves for even more food price rises, with beer, biscuits and bread among items expected to jump. The wet weather means harvests of barley and wheat could be down by as much as a fifth. Storms and flooding throughout the last few months have forced British farmers to constantly delay sowing their crops. The warning comes just as food prices are beginning to fall following soaring inflation sparked by the global gas price crisis. For the latest stories, you can sign up for GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Back now to Martin.
Thank you, Ray. Wow. Well, it's certainly been a manic Monday afternoon for Scottish politics, and Scottish National Party leader Humza Yousaf has sensationally quit, triggering a search for a successor and a new Scottish First Minister. Well, he announced his intention to stand down after the collapse of a coalition deal with the Green Party triggered 2 no-confidence votes in his leadership. And former Deputy First Minister John Swinney has said he's considering standing in the race to find Yousaf's replacement. Well, Scottish MPs now have 28 days to install a new First Minister. Now, that is a lot to take in. Let's get all the latest developments with our Scotland reporter, Tony Maguire. Tony, they say a week is a long time in politics. A weekend proved to be decisive for Humza Yousaf. Friday night, when we spoke, I will fight on, he said. Monday morning, he threw in the towel. It's curtains for Humza Yousaf.
Indeed, Martin, and it's as we said, you know, on that Thursday morning when he ended that Butte House agreement after 969 days, you know, many people said that he jumped before he was pushed out by the Greens, and certainly that seems to be the case again today. He, over the weekend, unfortunately was rallying back and forth between trying to get support from the Greens, which he had just ditched, as well as Alba's singular MSP in Ash Regan. There was going to be factions within the Scottish National Party that didn't appeal to those parties. Now, it seemed to be that he took the decision to leave, and that then sets us into motion for another SNP leadership race just about 14 months after the previous one, when Nicola Sturgeon left her role after several years. Now, interestingly, there have been a couple of names already put out in the running. It is way too early to say any of these with definite, but Nicola Sturgeon's former Deputy First Minister John Swinney, he's the one name that's been bandied around something awful, and certainly in GB News he spoke to us a little earlier on today, and he said that he was considering his options very carefully. Now, he didn't want to go for that role the last time because he thought that the SNP needed that fresh perspective, but then this time he doesn't seem to be so quick to count it out. And of course the other is Kate Forbes. She came so close against Humza Yousaf, just a couple of percent between them by the time it got to the secondary votes. But indeed, right now, today is the day for Scottish politicians to pour their heart out, as it were, for Humza Yousaf for the time that they had spent. Nicola Sturgeon certainly had some warm words to share on X. Now, his opposition leaders, Douglas Ross, well, he said that the job is done for the Scottish Conservatives at this moment. They'll go forward now and they'll continue to fight the SNP for those crucial election seats as and when the general election is called by Westminster. And Anas Sarwar, leader of the Scottish Labour Party, well, he is hungry and then some for a Scottish election. He still doesn't believe that the Scottish National Party are fit to be leading Scotland. But certainly enough maybe about the political elite. What about the people here on the ground, here at Holyrood and at Butte House earlier on today? Lots of people turning up to see what all the fuss was about, and I got their reaction there on the ground. Well, how do you take the news this morning?
Oh, it's brilliant news. Aye. If we get our country back and stop with these speech laws, hate speech.
I really feel that he's been manoeuvred into a situation which doesn't account for the good, humane man that he is.
Bad situation for Humza and it's bad for Scotland.
I think it's a very good thing. Scotland needs a firm minister to take the country forward.
Certainly the SNP have been leading down a raggly road for the last 7-8 years.
As they would say, that Greens betrayed us
because when they had their challenge, we supported them.
The Parliament, the Tories and the Labour, all they can think of is grievance. Grievance.
Now, the good viewers and listeners, well, they look to us for answers, and I'm afraid today we're only left with more questions. What about the SNP now? What about independence? What about who's going to lead the country going forward into the next general and Scottish election? Will it be in 2026? We just don't know, but hopefully over the next few days more answers will start to show themselves.
Tony Maguire, live in Edinburgh. You've been excellent across this story, my old son. Thank you very much for joining us once again. And let's flip back to Westminster and get a reaction from our political editor, Chris Hope, who joins me in the studio. Chris, what I was struck by with the electorate there, the voters, was a weariness. They're so tired of the infighting. One of the guys said, brilliant, we'll get our country back. He almost sounded like Lee Anderson.
Yeah, I was struck by the comparison on the UK level with Brexit. I think people are tired of the same kind of ideas as notion of independence, notion of a pure Brexit or whatever. People just want stuff to work, don't they?
Yeah.
I sense that frustration. Certainly in Scotland, look at the schooling, the way that England has soared ahead, and Scotland's great education system 20 years ago is not that anymore.
Do you think, or do you hope, that this might signify an end to the identity politics obsession we seem to see north of the border, an obsession with trans issues, gender recognition, an obsession with hate crime legislation that proved to be a complete red herring for the law enforcement officers who had to actually get on the thick end of this?
Well, there are some proper cases of hate crime within that, but in terms of the whole number are reported, yeah.
And the net zero stuff. People want their schools to work. They want to be able to get a GP's appointment. They want crime to go down. Terrible drug problems in Scotland. Can we finally get back to basics, or am I hoping for too much?
You might be hoping for too much. I mean, John Swinney, if he becomes leader, which looks like he will do, is a safe pair of hands, of course. Deputy to Nicola Sturgeon, said goodbye to his political career when she quit in 2023. A former leader in opposition of the SNP back in 2004. I knew him when I worked in Scotland. He was a shadow finance spokesman. A very decent man, but certainly not someone who would go down those rabbit holes, as you're describing, on the issues of gender and the like. I think he's someone who will return to more of the centre ground and doing the right things correctly. The SNP, though, it has to be viewed for what it's for. It is a party to bring about the independence of Scotland. Yeah. So you have to view all of its policies through that prism, I think, and that's part of the problem. That almost has dominated too much in recent years, and they've lost sight of what they should be doing. What they don't want right now is an election, and we do think, by the way, this week that Labour will push for this no-confidence vote, even now, and it might be likely that the Greens will step back from the brink and won't vote to bring that government down.
And we spoke to Brian Monteith, a former MSP earlier, who says he thinks that UCIF fell on his sword precisely to avoid that no-confidence vote in the entire establishment. Let's move back to this side of the border. Dan Poulter, who defected from the Conservative Party. He's the MP, of course, for Central Suffolk and North Ipswich. Defected to the Labour Party. Sir Keir Starmer has been doing a walkabout earlier. I think we have some footage of Sir Keir Starmer with Dan Poulter. And this should have been Labour's big day. This should have been... There he is. He's pointing in the eye. I'm saying, Starmer is saying, where are all the journalists? Well, the answer is... they're all obsessed with Humza Yousaf. This should have been a big moment for Sir Keir Starmer. It's kind of been lost in the wash a bit today.
Well, I think they had their 36 hours of news. It emerged at 5 p.m. on Saturday, ran through Sunday, and today is a big reveal, like a by-election victory they haven't fought. I mean, 24,000 majority for Dan Poulter in Central Suffolk and North Ipswich, and he's given that away. He wants to go back to the NHS. He's making criticisms saying the Tory government isn't focused on it. Facts might suggest that they are. A £50 billion increase in spending on the NHS since 2010. A lot of that was on the side of the bus, don't forget. The government says that money's been absorbed back into the NHS. But yeah, no question. I think, frustrating. He would say, I tried to reform the NHS, I couldn't get anywhere with it. Arguably, though, by joining the Labour Party, I think, has the most permission to reform the NHS. If you listen to what Wes Streeting is saying, he is someone who wants to reform it. The Tories haven't got the political space to do that. Maybe that's why he's done it. He hasn't said that, though. He said he simply wasn't being listened to, so he's quit.
And he's not standing at the next election, so he's not doing this to jump ship and get a safe seat back with the Labour Party. He's making, if you like, a kind of end-of-career statement. Do you think it's quite damning that he says the Tories aren't going to back NHS reform, and instead, how can you even say this? You know, it's the Labour Party that might grasp the nettle of privatisation.
Well,
West Streeting's been saying.
If you listen to West Streeting, he is talking about reforming the NHS. He's talking to his own party, his own supporters. You know, don't worry about using the private healthcare system to clear this 7 million backlog of people waiting for treatment. So I think he's talking the language on reform in a way the Tory party can't, and maybe that's the bet he's taking. He has been asked, West Streeting, is there a deal behind the scenes? Will Dan Poulter emerge wrapped in ermine and as in the House of Lords? Not as far as West Streeting knows. So as far as we know, that's not the case.
Never a dull day in politics, especially not with you around, Chris Hope. Always an absolute delight. You get lots more on that story on our website, and thanks to you, GBNews.com is the fastest growing national news website in the country. It's got breaking news and all of the brilliant analysis that you come to expect from us here at GB News. Now, apparently, summer is just around the corner, and we want to make it sizzle for you with an incredible £20,000 in cash up for grabs in the latest Great British Giveaway. It's our biggest cash prize to date, and it could be yours. And here's how you could be our winner.
We've blown the budget by giving you the chance to win a totally terrific £20,000 in tax-free cash to make your summer spectacular. You could use that cash to splash out on a holiday, make the garden glam, buy a new car, or just save it for a rainy day. Whatever you'd spend £20,000 on, make sure you don't miss the chance to make it yours. For a chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Still to come, the huge row between the UK and Ireland over who should look after the growing number of asylum seekers crossing the Northern Ireland border. It's borderline insanity. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Dubes & Co. Weekdays from 6 p.m.
You think this country needs new gas power stations. Apparently, this will all be about trying to get some form of energy security. Rishi Sunak has upset people today with this suggestion, people saying that actually this would do more damage to climate change than it would do good. Where are you on it, Richard?
I'll tell you exactly where. We need a lot more gas power stations and nuclear power stations because quite often the wind doesn't blow and the sun doesn't shine. Last week, we imported 16% of all our electricity because we haven't got enough capacity in the UK, and we're now totally over-reliant on renewables.
The part of the problem is the lack of storage capacity, which the government has finally got round to addressing. I think this as backup is actually quite a sensible idea. But they are not doing anything, as far as I can tell. At the moment, it will be retrofitted to have storage capability, which seems to be utterly bonkers. I mean, anyone who's got solar panels, you know very well you're storing up energy. So it's about storage as much as production. They could have gone, 20 years ago, we could have had nuclear power. We could have done more. We haven't looked far enough ahead in the future, and we are in grave danger of making the same mistake. I mean, the other side of this is, what is the difference going to be? Blackouts are, they're irritating and...
Irritating? It'd be disastrous. It would destroy our economy.
Well, they would be now, but, some of us remember 3-day weeks and things like that. And in fact, I grew up thinking that everybody had, at least a couple of days a week when they had to eat off a primus stove and things.
This is, again, I don't want to harp on, but this is one of the problems in the politics in our country, isn't it? So many politicians, they just think in election cycles.
Absolutely.
They just think, what can I do and say to get my own backside re-elected at the next general election? They're not always looking ahead. Actually, politics aside, what is genuinely the best thing for this country?
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
GB News is Britain's election channel. And from Thursday,
the people decide.
As the country heads to the polls in a rush of elections.
We'll take you through the night as the first results come in.
And we'll pick up at breakfast
with the very best guests and analysis.
And on the weekend, the results won't stop, and neither will we.
We'll explore what it all means for you as we look ahead to the general election.
Continuing coverage live from Thursday at midnight on GB News.
Welcome back. Your time is 5:22. I'm Martin Daubney and this is GB News. Now, an almighty row has broken out between Ireland and the United Kingdom after the Irish government announced an emergency law to return migrants to the UK, arguing that increasing numbers were down to Rishi Sunak's Rwanda bill. Well, this comes after violent protests against the rising number of asylum seekers erupted in Ireland last week. You can see pictures on your screen now. That's about an hour south of Dublin. Locals set fire to a site that had been earmarked for asylum seekers. Now, the UK government has indicated that it won't accept any migrant returns from Ireland unless EU-wide asylum rules are changed. We've got a Mexican standoff over the Irish border, and our Northern Ireland reporter, Doogie Beattie, joins us now. Doogie, welcome to the show. Always a delight. Now, we spoke earlier on, Doogie, and you've hit the nail on the head. For many, many years, the Irish people in the Republic have been complaining about rising immigration, rising asylum numbers, and now, at the 11th hour, they're blaming Rishi Sunak, they're blaming the Rwanda bill. What's the reality, Doogie?
Well, that is completely correct. Micheál Martin realises in these European elections that are going to come here that he has to blame somebody for a failed immigration policy. So revert to a past and just blame the British. It was them, they did it. And Rishi Sunak is only too happy but to say that another country is giving off because the Rwanda bill is causing people to come south. Now, there is a certain amount of truth in that, because I've covered this for GB News for the past 2 years, and the really decent people of Dublin, in particular North Dublin, have been inundated into working class areas with immigrants coming from the UK who have maybe been in the UK for a number of years and have decided, well, if this Rwanda bill comes into place, we're going to move there. So it hasn't been something that's happened since last week. And of course, Leo Varadkar knew this when he was signing up to the Brexit agreement, and he was offered a smart border in Ireland, and between Donald Tusk and Michel Barnier, they put it up to Theresa May and said, no, there can be no border at all in Ireland. Now, a border in Ireland wouldn't be a military border. It would be an electronic border that would track the movement of people and track the movement of goods. There would be no downfall to that border. But we have a common travel area that exists between the United Kingdom and the Republic of Ireland. It was put in place in 1926. Various parts have been in and out of places. Britain has went in and out of wars. And it's really the one from the 1970s that we work upon. Now, tomorrow I'm hearing that there may be a debate in the Dáil in and around the common travel area, of which Sinn Féin, who are the largest party in the Republic of Ireland, would have to oppose, because that would then end up putting some border back in Ireland. And of course, Fine Gael, Fianna Fáil and the Greens that are in a coalition government at the moment are wanting to do something for these European elections. But on Thursday night at Newtown, Mount Kenny, the Garda turned pepper spray and the riot squad on what would be an upper middle class area of Wicklow, and they turned it on the locals. That was the real point here that shook the establishment in Dublin. They realised that some of these people would be very big Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil supporters, and by sending the Garda Síochána out in force to them has actually caused this row to break out, because Ireland is in a real financial state of having, and I said it before, and I was totally trashed for saying it, Martin, that the infrastructure is not here. And it's not that Ireland's a poor country, it's a very good country, it's a very modern country, but they have a modern society and an infrastructure for about 4 million people. There's now over 5 million here, and in the last 10 years, you know, that 1 million of them are not Irish citizens, and that's only the ones that's registered. That's not including the illegal immigrants that have came in here, and now many of them are travelling on this road where I stand, southward bound, because they are afraid of the Rwanda bill. So there's some sorting out to be done here, and the biggest thing that was amazing to me was the amount of people that were welcoming GB News in the door, because they do not trust their own media to tell the truth of what is going on.
Superb stuff. Dougie Beattie on the border with Ireland and Northern Ireland, and it's great to hear that they're listening to us over there, talking sense. Dougie Beattie smashed it. Always a pleasure. Thank you very much. Now, Rishi Sunak's Rwanda deal has had a ringing endorsement from none other than European Union chief Ursula von der Leyen's party. Can you Adam and Eve it? The European People's Party, the largest in the European Parliament, has said it wants to implement the concept of safe third countries. In its manifesto, it actually stated anyone applying for asylum in the EU could also be transferred to a safe third country and undergo the asylum process there. Exactly like the Rwanda deal then. You could not make this up, and I'm joined now by the member of the European Parliament, Charlie Weymouth. Charlie, welcome to the show. I find this simply astonishing. I sat as an MEP. Ursula von der Leyen was the world's #1 fan of open borders. Suddenly, it's election time. Suddenly, they're in trouble, and she turns into a mini Nigel Farage.
Well, she's on the campaign trail, isn't she? I mean, for 5 years, her commission has been refusing to fund border walls at the EU external border. So it's a bit surprising to hear this rhetoric coming from none other than Ursula von der Leyen, but I welcome it. I mean, I gotta say that finally the center right of Europe is waking up to the reality that mass migration is not working. That's at least positive.
And is this, Charlie, just the usual case of politicians sensing they're about to get hammered at the elections? We know there are reports of the right parties, the Eurosceptic parties, making massive gains across many of the European member states. Is this a political act of survival? And more to the point, will the voters buy it?
Well, it is quite desperate, to be honest, and you should read the fine printing in her remarks. She's actually stating that, you know, this should be according to ECHR judgment and so on and so forth. So, I mean, I'm feeling a bit of weasel acting on the behalf of the EPP, her European party. Are they just going to walk away from this after the elections? I mean, the only safe option for European voters is to go for real conservatives in this election.
Because, Charlie, if this were to be the manifesto and if they were to implement it, there could be the astonishing situation, Charlie Weymouth, that the European Court of Human Rights could take Ursula von der Leyen to court.
Yeah, I'd love to see that. I mean, actually, we're looking forward to a new mandate with a center-right majority in which we conservatives, the ECR group, can actually play a constructive role in shaping climate policy, energy policy, migration policy. And of course, the Rwanda plan is part of our policies and we will fight for it. And we also say from my party's side that, you know, the process to become part of the European Convention on Human Rights that the EU is in right now, got to stop. And if countries, individual countries, member states are stopped, like the UK, from actually implementing a third country plan, well, we better leave the ECHR.
Well, Charlie Weymouth, thank you very much for joining us, member of the European Parliament. All to play for in these elections in June. Make no mistake, there's a very real possibility, I beg your pardon, that a centre-right coalition might take over control of the European Parliament, and then all bets are off. We're going to be seeing a rapid spiral of control falling away from the centrists, from the Liberals. Amazing stuff. Loads still to come between now and 6 o'clock, and a wedding snap is released to mark William and Kate's 13th wedding anniversary. But how will they be celebrating during this tough year? They've had a wonderful picture of Britain's favourite royals. But first, it's time for your latest news headlines, and it's Ray Addison.
Thanks, Martin. 5:31, our top stories. A leadership contest will be launched in Scotland after the First Minister announced his resignation. Humza Yousaf's admitted he underestimated the level of upset he would cause by cutting political ties with the Greens. He's also stepping down as SNP leader, but will continue in that post until a replacement is found. An emotional Mr Yousaf said he's quitting to help repair relationships across the political divide.
I bear no ill will and certainly bear no grudge against anyone. Politics can be a brutal business. It takes its toll on your physical and mental health. Your family suffer alongside you. I am in absolute debt to my wonderful wife, my beautiful children, and my wider family for putting up with me over the years. I'm afraid you will be seeing a lot more of me from now.
Two men have appeared in court charged with murder after a torso was found in a nature reserve in Salford. The 68 and 42-year-olds spoke only to confirm their names and dates of birth with the help of Polish translators. Greater Manchester Police believes that human remains at 3 other locations belong to the same victim, a man in his 60s. A man has admitted killing a pensioner on a mobility scooter in West London just 5 days after being released from prison. 45-year-old Lee Byer stabbed 87-year-old Thomas O'Halloran in the neck and chest in what was described as a motiveless attack in August 2022. Byer denied murder but pleaded guilty to manslaughter by diminished responsibility. Campaigners have been rallying outside Parliament, where MPs are debating whether assisted dying should be legalised for the terminally ill. It's after more than 200,000 people signed a petition backed by Dame Esther Ransom, who has stage 4 lung cancer. Those who oppose a change in the law fear that vulnerable people could be pressured into ending their lives. For the latest stories, you can sign up for GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Well, let's have a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2556 and 1.1713 euros. Price of gold, £1,864.68 per ounce. And the FTSE 100 closed at 8,147 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Thank you, Ray. Now, hundreds of you have been getting in touch with the show on the topic of giving people benefits vouchers instead of cash so they can't misspend it on things like ciggies and booze. Steve says this: I see no reason why benefits should not be paid in vouchers. There is no stigma attached to visiting food banks these days, so why not vouchers? Quite simply, our benefits bill is totally unsustainable. And that's my favourite part of the show because I'm joined by the queen of primetime political debate, and it's Michelle Dewberry. Michelle, what's on your menu?
Hello,
there, Martin. Yeah, fascinating story that about those vouchers. I want to explore that a little bit because some people are saying, well, hold on a minute, this is the government trying to control how we spend our money. But hang on, if you're receiving that money from the government, should they be able to have some control in that or not? Of course, I do want to ask the viewers, how much do you care about the goings-on when it comes to Humza Yousaf? Are you sitting there now saying, thank God he's gone? Does it bother you at all? Does it affect your life in any way? And actually, the goings-on in Scotland, has this just paved the way to make it easier, potentially, for Keir Starmer to have a route, a fast track into Downing Street? Also, as well, the assisted dying debate taking place. Personally, I think I should be able to choose when I end my life. I wonder if the viewers agree with that or not. I can tell you my panel completely disagree. And also, did you see at the weekend as well, we've had another defection over to the Labour Party. There's something I don't like about this, Martin. If you elect a member of Parliament, let's just say a Tory one in this case, it's not for them to suddenly decide that that seat is now going to become Labour and vice versa without a by-election, is it?
Superb stuff. A show packed full of punch as ever. Michelle Dewberry, Jubes and Co. 6 till 7 p.m. right after this. Looks fantastic. Now, in a few minutes, we're talking royal news, but first, there's a new way to get in touch with us here at GB News, and here's Bev Turner with all of the details.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family. Simply go to gbnews.com/yoursay.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm John Vincent. Stop-start traffic in Glasgow, firstly on the M8 in both directions in the roadworks between junction 15 Townhead and 21 for the M74. Also slow on the M77 southbound between junction 22 Plantation and 1 Dumbreck Road. Queuing traffic on the M67 eastbound in Manchester, that's due to an accident at junction 3 for Hyde. Slow for the M11 northbound in Essex due to an earlier traffic problem between junction 5 Loughton and 6 for the M25. Slow traffic on the M4 eastbound in Berkshire. There's a lane closed for an accident between junction 8 Maidenhead and 7 for Slough West. And we're seeing stop-start traffic on the M25 anti-clockwise in Surrey. We've got a lane closed for a broken down lorry just before junction 8 for Reigate. And that's the latest traffic and travel news.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
TfL bosses have come under fire after banning an advert. Oh, God. They've banned an advert for a comedy show because it had a hot dog on it, because that supposedly promotes obesity.
The comedian Ed Gamble has swapped the image of the fast food favourite in favour of a cucumber instead. And there's the cucumber on the plate.
So is the UK turning into a nanny state? Let's talk to former presenter of Fat Families, Steve Miller, and nutritionist Olivia Parry. Good to see you both this morning. Olivia, it's a comedy show. He's not promoting eating hot dogs, is he? Is this just a load of nonsense?
The thing is, we have a huge problem with overweight and obesity in this country. We're fourth in Europe. It's big business. Advertising for food companies is big business. They make so much money. You just have to switch on primetime TV to watch, food after food advertisements. And it's for the youngsters as well, who don't have the nutritional education. We're not taught cookery in school anymore. People go to college and to university, they don't know how to cook.
But
and it leads
forgive me for jumping in, Olivia. Forgive me for jumping in, but the whole point with this is it's an advert for a comedy show.
Yes, I know, but this is a wider issue.
I think it's a load of old tosh, to be quite honest with you. It's a hot dog. In fact, I wish they'd have put onions on the hot dog. A bit of what you fancy won't hurt you. You should eat 80-20 anyway. We talk about a nanny state. I actually think, arguably, we're becoming an authoritarian state. Opinions banned. Comedy banned. The England flag banned. It's like we've got to wear a virtual muzzle.
Welcome back. It's 5:40. We're on the final furlong. I'm Martin Daubney, and this is GB News. Now, today marks the 13th anniversary of the wedding of the Prince and Princess of Wales, and they've released an unseen photograph of their wedding day. It's an absolutely wonderful picture. And joining me now to discuss this is the former BBC royal correspondent, Michael Cole. Michael, always a delight. What a great way to start the week to have you on the show on a Monday. Britain's favourite royal couple, a sensational picture reminding us of why they're so wonderful and popular.
Good afternoon, Martin. Yes, and I think we can, on behalf of the whole country, send our congratulations. 13 years, 3 beautiful children being brought up properly, and very, very good going. And I have to tell you this, Martin, very close to home for you, a 13th wedding anniversary is a lace wedding anniversary. And there she is, dressing in lace. Nottingham and lace were once synonymous. And what a beautiful picture this is. Not a picture contemporary from the wedding day, when the prince had changed from his red tunic, which he wore for his wedding at Westminster Abbey, into a guards officer's day dress, a uniform with the frogging, very, very handsome. I know that the Queen insisted that he wore the red tunic of the guards. I'm not sure whether he was very happy about that, because he did most of his service in the RAF. And I personally feel that the RAF blue uniform with the white bride's dress would have been better. I always think when I see red and white like that, I always think of a barber's pole, which of course is reminiscent when barbers were barber surgeons, and the red and the white symbolized the blood and the bandages. And I've never really quite liked it, but it's a great picture, of course, because she's undergoing treatment, and we wish her so much better as soon as possible. There's not a new photograph.
And Michael, just to point out there, you weren't outing me for a man with a penchant for lace. You were saying that I come from Nottingham, which is famed for its lace. In fact, I worked in a lace factory when I was 13, my first job. Let's move on to a royal couple not quite so popular, certainly. Prince Harry, the Invictus Games rejection. Another anniversary, this time the 10th anniversary, Michael, of the Invictus Games. The Ginger Whinger due to give a speech. Turns out none of the royals are going to turn up.
That's not a great surprise, but let us be fair. Nobody leaves a battlefield unscarred. Invictus means unconquerable. And after his 2 tours of duty in Afghanistan, coming back on a transport plane with coffins, holding the bodies of brave British soldiers who died out there, he had an idea which I think was brilliant. Of course, this was all pre-Meghan, very much so. And he decided to start the Invictus Games. And now 22 countries send their wounded, their traumatized, their damaged people to those games, and they do a tremendous amount of good. What is interesting is that Prince Harry, first of all, went over to America to see the Warrior Games there, and he came back. And let me tell you this, Martin, this is quite interesting. When he started to set it up, the 2 people who worked with him were his brother and his sister-in-law. They were closely associated with the beginning of the Invictus Games. And at that time, pre-Meghan, he virtually lived in their flat at Kensington Palace. I think Prince William got a bit fed up with him, always with his wife. And those 3 got on so well, they couldn't have been closer.
Yeah,
of course,
how times change, Michael. I'm afraid we simply have to leave it there. We've run out of time. Michael Cole, a man who always laces this show with a regal quality. See you again soon. Thank you very much. Now, still to come before 6 p.m, my panel Emma Webb and Judita De Silva will be back to discuss some of the stories of the day, including that proposal to replace sickness benefits with vouchers. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Afternoon, welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. An east-west split with the weather again tomorrow. It'll feel a bit warmer in many eastern areas, but again, further west, just like today, the low pressure will dominate and there will be further outbreaks of rain. This weather front has made for quite a damp day over parts of Wales. That rain now extending up across northern Scotland. Some heavy showers for Northern Ireland for a while. Should turn drier here through this evening, drying up in southern Scotland, staying dry across East Anglia and the southeast, but further rain at times over the Midlands, parts of Wales and the southwest of England too, where it stays cloudy. Temperatures likely to stay up 8, 9, maybe 10 degrees Celsius, even with some clearer spells. Not particularly chilly, certainly a much milder night than recently across Scotland. Maybe 5 or 6 through some sheltered glens. Generally, though, a lot of cloud around on Tuesday morning. Some heavier rain again for Northern Ireland and parts of Wales, particularly Pembrokeshire early on, and then Devon and Cornwall too. But a much brighter day for northwest England. Plenty of sunshine right across northern England, the Midlands, East Anglia and the southeast. And here really will feel quite a bit warmer than it has done for most of April. 16, 17, 18 degrees easily. It will be cooler where we've got the cloud and the outbreaks of rain further west. Quite blustery here too, particularly in the morning, thanks to this area of low pressure. Now that does peel away, allowing warmer air to move in through the rest of this week, but there will still be some rain around as well.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people.
To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threats on.
Our job is to do what's in the best interest of our country.
You made my argument for me. My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
I'm hearing it up and down the country.
That was a beginning, not an end.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's election channel. And from Thursday,
the people decide.
As the country heads to the polls in a rush of elections.
We'll take you through the night as the first results come in.
And we'll pick up at breakfast
with the very best guests and analysis.
And on the weekend, the results won't stop, and neither will we.
We'll explore what it all means for you as we look ahead to the general election.
Continuing coverage live from Thursday at midnight on GB News.
Welcome back. It's 5:48. We're on the final furlong now, and I'm joined in the studio once again by political commentator Emma Webb and the broadcast journalist Juditha De Silva. Right, let's get stuck into this story today about the benefits clampdown, Juditha. The theory being £69 billion per year on sickness benefits. 2/3 of that is mental health. To try and clamp down on the cost, the proposal is to give vouchers, food stamps, for example, instead of cash, because food banks are being used for free food and the cash is being misspent. Is this acceptable or is it dehumanising?
It is dehumanising because, understandably, what they're trying to do is find a solution that's a filtration system for people who don't have really grave illnesses, and therefore you're trying to get them to a point where they can return to work quicker. But what you're doing is basically trying to find a cost-saving measure as opposed to an assessment of human strife. And that's what I say is dehumanising about it, because how do you give someone with a mental health issue a voucher to cure their ailment? What they need is support through the transition to better health. And that is something that's financial. And what will be the financial equivalent? Because if you're saying you're doing this as a cost-saving measure, for giving them a voucher for talking remedies, that's a therapist, that takes money. So you're going to have to divest funds to that. So which one is it because one is inexpensive? So the quality of the kind of talking measures is going to be lower. So you're devaluing the value of human welfare.
Emma.
I think it's important that taxpayer money is spent efficiently on this kind of thing. And yes, there are many people who do have legitimate disabilities, and some of those will be mental health related, and they should have support to do that, though I am a bit sceptical about how effective the government would be in channeling them towards mental health services through the NHS, but that's a separate issue. I think that the taxpayer needs, especially with the cost of living crisis and everything, a lot of the people who are suffering, including people who use food banks, will be paying taxes and will be having those taxes spent inefficiently on certain things, including on other people who might be unnecessarily taking up resources in this way. So I do think that, and the government is right, I think, in saying that we shouldn't be supporting with taxpayer money people who are just struggling with the normal trials and tribulations of life.
What is the metric for that? Because how do you assess that somebody who presents with a mental health problem, say that's just life? What is the barometer of measurement and who established it? Because if medical professionals have diagnosed this person with a mental health issue, that needs recourse and that takes money.
It's difficult because there's an element of subjectivity in mental health diagnosis, but the reality is that we are very lucky in this country that we do have the ability to spend taxpayer money on helping those who might need it in this way. But it's also important for taxpayers that that money is spent effectively. And I do appreciate the fact that government are trying to figure out a way to ensure that that money is being spent properly. I do also recognise, though, that you are right, that I can imagine that being given a voucher instead of being given money might feel a little dehumanising to use that voucher rather than cash. However, there will be people who are taking the mick out of the system.
There are going to be people like that, but you have to accept that the fundamental motivation for this is cost-saving measures. And when you're dealing with something that, again, is as difficult to measure as mental health, you're playing fast and loose with something that you already do not have a hold on. But
isn't that the point, though, Judita? If it's difficult to measure, people go on the fiddle.
Some people will, but then what they've presented doesn't show a robust filtration system to truly assess the individual. Because let's face it, there will be people who fall through the cracks because you do not want to force someone back into work that does not have the mental capacity to be productive at it. Because then on the back end of that, you're going to have businesses and industries that are struggling to deal with employees that are subpar.
But then the argument would be that actually for many people who do have mental health problems, that what they need is not support to stay out of work, but support to be able to get back into work, to have a social life, to be in the world, to be less atomised. And that actually we are creating a culture that is mollycoddling and that is unaffordable. Long term, it's just not sustainable. So we do need people to get back into work, and simply having nerves or anxiety, and yes, I get these things are on a spectrum and they are subjective, and how one person reacts to a bad situation in life will be different to the way another person reacts. And there is an element of judgment that needs to be involved there. But the reality is that you can't endlessly spend taxpayer money on things that, as you say, some people will be on the fiddle. And it is a luxury that we have the ability to do that in this country. But at the moment, people are suffering. We can't afford all of this taxpayer money to be spent on people that really should be in work, and that it would actually be better for them if they were able to get back into work.
So don't you think that then, when you are then presented with an issue where businesses are saying that we have problematic employees, but again, because of a situation that you have a society that, like you said, is mollycoddling, they are now strangled as to whatever recourse they have to terminate that employee, to tell them to force them to take leave, because you now have a workforce with questionable mental health stability being put back into situations that they cannot cope with. You've created a new problem within the corporate sector. And so you're trying to prevent one problem by potentially creating a bigger one, because you haven't gone back to the source of the issue, which is you have to set up a structure within mental health provisions in healthcare that is more robust and more.
But it's costing 69 billion quid a year. We can't keep doing this forever, surely. That's the point.
Yeah, we're not babies, we're adults, and we need to be treated like adults and not babied by the state. I think, yes, I recognise that it is sometimes important to give people support when they need it. All you have to do is look at the homelessness problem and various things that people will see on the streets of their own towns to know that we do have issues with mental health and there are people that need support. But it's about doing that effectively and efficiently and not wasting taxpayer money. And unfortunately, I think that the statistics show that there are too many people who are taking sick leave because of mental health reasons. Of course, there will be legitimate reasons why there might be an increasing issue in that respect. But we have to
leave it there. Emma Webb, Judita De Silva, superb stuff. We can continue this one in the pub over the way in a minute. Thanks for joining us on the show. It's been superb having you. Jubes & Co. is up next, but first it's time for your weather, and it's Alex Deakin. I'll see you tomorrow, same time, 3 o'clock.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Afternoon. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. An east-west split with the weather again tomorrow. It'll feel a bit warmer in many eastern areas, but again, further west, just like today, the low pressure will dominate and there will be further outbreaks of rain. This weather front has made for quite a damp day over parts of Wales. That rain now extending up across northern Scotland. Some heavy showers for Northern Ireland for a while. Should turn dry here through this evening, drying up in southern Scotland, staying dry across East Anglia and the southeast, but further rain at times over the Midlands, parts of Wales and the southwest of England too, where it stays cloudy. Temperatures likely to stay up 8, 9, maybe 10 degrees Celsius, even with some clearer spells. Not particularly chilly, certainly a much milder night than recently across Scotland. Maybe 5 or 6 through some sheltered glens. Generally, though, a lot of cloud around on Tuesday morning. Some heavier rain again for Northern Ireland and parts of Wales, particularly Pembrokeshire early on, and then Devon and Cornwall too. But a much brighter day for northwest England. Plenty of sunshine right across northern England, the Midlands, East Anglia and the southeast. And here really will feel quite a bit warmer than it has done for most of April. 16, 17, 18 degrees easily. It will be cooler where we've got the cloud and the outbreaks of rain further west. Quite blustery here too, particularly in the morning, thanks to this area of low pressure. Now that does peel away, allowing warmer air to move in through the rest of this week, but there will still be some rain around as well.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good evening, I'm Johnny Ratner with the latest. Big problems in Greater Manchester. The M67 remains closed eastbound from Junction 3, the high turn-off to where it meets and turns into the A57 and the scene of an accident causing queues. Problems on 2 stretches of the M6 meanwhile. First of all, the left lane's closed heading south through Cheshire from the M56 towards Knutsford after a lorry broke down, and further south, long queues heading south through Staffordshire, 14 to 30 near Stafford, where the 2 left lanes are closed where a car's caught fire. On the Surrey stretch of the M25, the inside lane shut anti-clockwise just before